We now come to the backbench debate on 50 years of pride in the UK. I call Angela Crawley to move the motion.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that this House has considered 50 years of pride in the United Kingdom. It is both a huge privilege to lead today's debate, commemorating the UK's first Pride March in London on the 1st of July 1972, and all of the Pride events that took place in the 50 years that followed. I'd like to express my sincere thanks to the members of the Backbench Business Committee for allowing time for today's debate and especially ensuring that we have this important debate in the Chamber on Pride Month. I'd also like to thank more widely everyone who has organised, supported and taken part in the many Pride events over the years. And it is thanks to the many who have protested, marched and fought that we have many of the rights that I enjoy today. I'd also like to thank all of the members in this House who have bravely throughout the years spoken out about their sexuality, their gender and even their HIV status. It is more important than ever that this House reflects and represents the society that we have the privilege to represent. Hear, hear. Hear, hear. For their representation of LGBT constituents and for bringing forth the LGBT issues on the floor of the House in committees and in legislation, it is essential that we continue to strive for greater equality, not just in Pride Month, but every time we can in this Chamber and in this House. Now, the first London Pride event was a demand for progress, and the first Gay Pride in the UK was organised by the Gay Liberation Front, the UK's first direct action human rights movement of openly lesbian, gay and bisexual and transgender people. The 1972 Pride March was attended by an estimated 2,000 people who marched from Trafalgar Square to Hyde Park with the intention of combating the invisibility, denigration and closeted shame in which most LGBT people were forced to live at that time. Now, those marchers were inspired by the Gay Liberation Front's list of demands, many of which are now enacted in law, thankfully. And in the 50 years, the progress that has been made in terms of LGBT equality has been drastic and significant. Milestones such as equal marriage, the abolition of Section 28, to the recent work of Time for Inclusive Education in Scotland and the diversity of families as we celebrate more routes to parenthood that now exist for LGBT families. But the reality is that LGBT people are protected in the workplace by equality legislation and hate crime laws which serve to protect against harassment and attacks, but all too often these still occur. And I urge the Minister to add to this list a full legislative ban on conversion therapy. Now, I will let members in this House decide for themselves to what extent the Gay Liberation Front's manifesto has been realised in the last 50 years for gay members of society. However, it is clear that many of the trans community and LGBT people of colour have been left behind. The UK's Black Pride report in 2021 said we will be heard and spoke of the general feeling of unsafety in the public among the LGBTQI+ people of colour and increasing racism. Nearly half of its respondents had been insulted, pestered, intimidated and harassed in the past year, compared to 27% of white respondents in the same report. It also speaks of the hostile media coverage of trans identities. 70% of trans and 62% of non-binary respondents said that they would feel uncomfortable using a public toilet, and the majority of trans respondents said they would avoid using a gym or sports ground for fear of discrimination or harassment. Now, the reality, sadly, is that we have seen an alarming rise in hate crimes against LGBTI people, and our report found that 64% of the LGBT community, including people like myself, have experienced violence or abuse based on their gender or sexuality, with only 1 in 5 being able to access that support. Now, given these worrying statistics, I ask the Minister what he is doing to tackle hate crime against the LGBT community, especially among those with intersectional identities, and what he will do to ensure that trans people in 2022 facing the same hate crime and discrimination that many of the LGBTI community faced in the 1980s, what he will do to ensure that the UK is the safest place to grow up, whether you are trans, gay, lesbian or non-binary. Now, what actions will he take to counter transphobia in the media, society, especially with the onslaught of concerns that have been raised about sports and other areas? Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, in the time I have, and I know we have many people who want to speak, but as a country that has held Pride for 50 years, we should be taking a leading role in promoting equality home and abroad. Yet sadly, the direction that this government is taking is worrying for the LGBT community. There are uncertainties around the Rwanda scheme, And in answer to questions on the scheme, the Government has been vague as to whether LGBTI asylum seekers will be exempt from deportation to a country which has been found in the Home Office's own report to pose a threat to LGBTI people. And I hope that the Minister will be able to answer this. We should be extending the hand of friendship and ensuring that the UK is the safest place. And we should keep in mind the difficulties faced by those who may have to admit their sexuality for the first time as part of the asylum application. Will the Minister use this debate to announce that no LGBT asylum seeker will be subject to deportation to Rwanda? Madam Deputy Speaker, as we come to the end of Pride Month, and with Pride happening this weekend, with events across the UK and indeed the world, we look forward to London Pride. We can reflect on the massive legal and social changes that have made the UK a safer, more welcoming and inclusive place for LGBT people. And we reflect on the people who have paved the way for current and future generations like myself, those of us who have made radical decisions, who have marched, who have campaigned for gay rights, and those who still bear the scars of discriminatory policies that many of us in this House can only barely recall, but some will recall only too well firsthand. Now, the SNP will continue always to strive for progress, equality and human rights, but we must push to fully promote LGBT equality. I challenge the Minister to tackle hate crime, to do all he can to promote safe and legal routes for asylum in the UK, and to ensure that all of the LGBT community facing oppression in their home states, that the UK will be a safe place, that they will not simply be returned to a place where their life may be in danger, and to champion LGBT equality at home and abroad, because I want to know that my son will grow up in a world that in 50 years' time is much more secure than the one that I've grown up in here.